is Jason Call. I am happy to be substitute hosting for Greg Arias. He's a journalist student at Mount Sac College, and he has a workshop to do tonight. So he's off doing his journalist thing and has left the podcast in our capable hands. So I want to welcome Thomas, Elizabeth, and Robin here. It is Friday, March 12th. And a lot of stuff going on in the news this week. We are going to start with a story that should be of great interest to everybody. We have not seen positive outcomes for decades on instances of police abuse and police murder, but we have hopefully we will end up with a different situation in this particular case. And we are talking about the trial now of Officer Derek Chauvin, who is the officer who knelt on George Floyd's neck for 8 minutes, 46 seconds until he had passed, sparking riots and protests all across the country. Thomas, why don't you go ahead and start us off with some thoughts about this trial and expected or maybe not expected outcomes?
Well, I mean, it's quite telling. They started with a second-degree murder charge, and it's come out now that they've decided to reduce the charges to third degree because they're scared that they're not going to get a conviction, basically, which is what it comes down to. And I think that's quite telling of a system that has protected law enforcement for so long that they're worried that they can't even get a conviction for what was a murder on video, quite blatant as well. And I think it brings up the larger question of what is it that we need to do in order to stop this from happening over and over and over again, because we keep seeing this repeat itself every so few months or years, and I think we're not going to get anywhere until we end qualified immunity for police officers. And I think I just think it's I don't know if for anybody listening, I don't know if anyone saw, but the family won the civil case, so they got a payout. I think it was over $23 million.
$27 million.
27. That's it. Sorry, 27.
Yeah, $27 million for the family of George Floyd, which unfortunately doesn't bring Mr. Floyd back.
No. But this highlights. This happens every time. They're more than willing to pay out in terms of money, in terms of, but it's not good enough. It's not good enough anymore. The taxpayer cannot be used as a way to just pay for a police abuses, a police murder. It can't be. That cannot be the only restorative justice that we have in this system.
And the truth is, a cash payout as a civil payment is not a measure of accountability for the police itself.
No.
Elizabeth, thoughts on this situation right now?
Yeah, so like both of you guys mentioned, finally we arrived at the moment where we're going to find out whether police officers are held accountable for their actions and for their crimes of murder. I did see that it was going back and forth from was it second-degree murder and third-degree murder? I was just wondering if you guys know why that it's going back and forward. Like, is there?
Sorry, go on.
Go ahead.
No, I was going to say my take is that they are worried that they're not going to get a conviction. Like, that's what it's mainly about. They have an easier chance of getting a conviction on a third-degree murder charge than a second degree.
I also heard that there's like this case that will like set a precedent for third degree murder cases. And I guess if that other case gets like thrown out, then if he gets convicted of third degree, then they would like be able to reopen the case. And I don't know, did you guys hear about that?
What I'm reading in the article right now says that the settlement could have implications. I'm reading directly from the Washington Post. Settlement could have implications for the criminal trial of Chauvin, who is charged with second and third degree murder and second degree manslaughter. But it doesn't say what those impacts are. But it does say the settlement will potentially have an impact on the actual criminal charges.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And I think, sorry, go on.
I just feel like they're, what always seems to happen is they get away with it. No one is held accountable. And that's the sad thing of where we find, ourselves in as a country, and accountability for our police officers. That's all.
And one of the things, and Robin, I'll get you in a second, but I wanted to comment, one of the things about not holding them immediately accountable is that then they seem to have a free hand to go out and commit further abuses. So it's that there's no learning here. There's no retraining. I mean, we saw with the Rochester police who essentially were not held accountable for the in custody death of Daniel Prude, and just a matter of weeks later, they're out pepper spraying a mother and her child. So we've got to have a way to have a change in behavior. I mean, what we really want here is accountability to translate into change of behavior, and it's just not doing that right now. Robin, what are your thoughts on this situation?
As Elizabeth said, we've seen these trials happen just so I feel like it's a show of the state saying look, see, we're doing our end, we're trying all these people, but there's never actually real accountability or a real reckoning of what's wrong with our criminal justice system. We saw the video, we see on Twitter, it's and media is calling the trial of George Floyd. George Floyd is not the perpetrator. He is the victim. He was murdered at the hands of the police. They knew what they were doing. They have medical training, or at least somewhat of a medical training, to know that if you're kneeling on someone's neck for 8 minutes, that they will pass away from suffocation or strangulation or whatever the medical term is for it. So I'm just, there's a part of me that's really hoping that he gets tried on the highest count that they're able to try him on. I'm also hoping that the people, Thomas Lane, Total, Jay Alexander, Kwong, I hope they're all, found guilty as well. And this really it shifts the whole culture around holding police officers accountable for abuse, for violence, for everything wrong that they do. I hope it shifts the culture. I hope police unions and departments start changing their tune, and they start actually really working towards not using police brutality or abusing their power just because they know they can get away with it. I'm sure this wasn't his first misconduct or police brutality case or instance where he used police brutality. I just hope that officers think 5 times before they do anything like this again. And I'm just really sick and tired of seeing more people dying at the hands of the police. And we're coming up on the 1-year anniversary of Breonna Taylor, so it's just heartbreaking, and hopefully there is justice and there is accountability. But I'm not holding my breath, because there's so far the jurors that they selected are 3 white men, 1 black man, and 1 juror of color. If it's a majority white case or white jury, I feel like it'll end in a mistrial. And the judge already refused, or there was something where he was refusing to prosecute or refusing to add a higher charge, and it's the same judge that has shown his bias. I'm just I feel like it's already on a bad start.
Yeah. Yeah, and
thanks,
it's
Ron.
it.
Thomas,
I just
go
want to
ahead.
add to that. Derek Chauvin. If you look at the statistics, he's been involved in 5 police murders, 5
Wow.
cases. So I'm just going to get it up because I think the police killed, I believe, 470. Yeah, something to remember because I tweeted. I didn't realize this, but I tweeted this out that something to remember today at the start of Derek Chauvin trial in Minneapolis for the murder of George Floyd. More than 470 people have been killed in Minneapolis by the police. Right, Chauvin was involved in 5 of those people being killed. So not only did he kill George Floyd, he's been involved in 5 instances of police murder. Right,
And
and
Thomas, it's such an important point that you make here because we find out so often that the quote unquote bad apples, they like to call them bad apples, have often their own internal rap sheets of abuse and violence that are dozens of cases long. I think we found the same thing with the officer, and I forget his name, who killed Mike Brown in Ferguson. When we took a look at that, I mean, he essentially an internal rap sheet, if you can call it that. And then the point that Robin made about the other officers involved in this being held accountable also, because there is such an internal cult of self-protection with the police that I know. And I say this as somebody whose brother-in-law was a police officer, and he told me I could tell you stories for days about cover-ups and this and that, where, if you really knew what went on in police departments, everybody would just absolutely freak out. But it's so hard to get a hold of that information and then have police hold themselves internally accountable. So it's an awesome point that you brought up there, Robin. Thank you. And Thomas, it looks like you got something else to add.
No, I was just going to say,
that was it.
It's almost like, has anyone watched The Shield, the TV show? It's almost like a documentary. Like if you watch it, it's like
I haven't seen it.
It's just insane. Like, and I think nothing will change unless we end qualified immunity. Like, we have to do that. Like, there is an organization for anyone listening called endqualifiedimmunity.org, and they're petitioning Joe Biden to end qualified immunity. So for anyone that's interested, that's listening, please go to that website. Please share the petition. We need to try and hold this administration accountable to criminal justice. We cannot have criminal justice unless we end qualified immunity. We need to hold police officers accountable.
Yeah, and as a candidate myself, a candidate for Congress, I am in support of the defund the police movement. There are real policy actions that are part of the defund police movement. I consider myself an abolitionist. I want to decarcerate our system, and I want to make sure all the funding that we put towards, police and weaponry, and this sort of system of abuse gets taken out of the hands of those abusers and put into the community. Because honestly, if we had a society that wasn't rife with poverty, that had real opportunity for all, that didn't saddle people with thousands of dollars of debt for student and healthcare and all of that we wouldn't really need this policing anyway. So let's really take a look at what's going on with our society and why we actually even feel we need police, because police do not solve problems. They exacerbate problems for the most part. All right. So hopefully we get a good outcome with that trial, but historically, we maybe should not keep our hopes up. Next thing I want to move on to today is we've got a governor in New York who is just mired in accusation after accusation. And almost getting lost in this is the fact that what was it? Upwards of 15,000 people in nursing homes have died because, he wasn't honest about what was going on with COVID in the state with nursing. Robin, do you have any thoughts on Governor Cuomo right now, either the nursing home situation or the sexual assault charges?
He needs to resign because of both. Like, we can't be a party that like touts like, oh, Trump is a sexual predator, which, he was, and try not hold our own accountable. It's more people are coming out with where Cuomo created a culture of sexual harassment. It's not one victim. He would make jokes. He would ask if I think one of the people who came out said that he asked if she's slept with older men. Like, it's disgusting. And he's saying he was one of the, sorry, it's just a lot. Like, I get heated about this just because it's so disgusting. Like, just resign. You were one of the on the front lines calling for Trump's resignation over sexual harassment and assault scandals. So why aren't you holding yourself to that same standard? He also refused to let the I want to say this, the Department of Justice, New Jersey State Department of Justice, look into it. He was going to hire his own, he was going to be like an internal thing in the governor's office. So it smells like a cover up. He needs to resign. It's appalling that he's not even considering it. It's
Absolutely.
just,
Absolutely.
it's disgusting.
Elizabeth.
Yeah, he needs to resign because, like Robin said, we can't be the party, Democrats, I consider myself a Democrat, but yeah, we can't be the party that points finger at the Republican Party and says, you're XYZ, and within our own party, we have the same problems. I am seeing that Schumer and Gillibrand have both asked for his resignation, and then I see him, he has put out statements denying the accusations and had mentioned something like he's not going to give in to cancel culture or something like that. And I just feel like even his response to the accusations is disregarding to the victims that have come forward.
Yeah, it's highly inappropriate. Yeah.
Yeah, and it further demonstrates how much willing he's how willing he is to like cover up his misconduct.
Yeah. Thomas?
Well, I might get a lot of heat for this, but this is a direct result of not taking Joe Biden's accusation seriously. The Democrats, I'm sorry, but Democrats, unfortunately, and I'm seeing a lot of this, is that they use the fact that Trump never got held accountable for his sexual assault allegations, right? And they deflect and say, well, Trump never got held accountable, so why are we holding our own accountable? Right, and this is
a lot of people saying that. Yep.
And this is a slippery slope where we just decide that we're not going to hold our own accountable because the other side isn't doing so. And you made a good point, Elizabeth, that we are better than this. Okay, this is a non-starter. If you decide that you're going to assault women while in office, not only should you resign, but you should be held. You should be holding legal charges. Like this is not okay, and it can never be okay. And so I unfortunately I don't take people seriously. If you are calling for Cuomo to resign, you should be directing that energy towards Biden. Also, you should be directing that energy towards Trump. Like anybody, I don't care who you are affiliated with. I don't care your political ideology. I do not care what party you represent. This is not okay. It's not okay. And I want to point out that although the sexual assault allegations are very serious, the Nixonite scandal with the care home situation, that alone, not only should he resign, but he should be held in contempt. He should be impeached, not just resign, but not only did he cover up that he deliberately killed 15,000 people in care homes, right? He used his own office to fudge the numbers.
Yeah, he spread disinformation. Yeah,
his aides are complicit in this, not just him, right? So you've got an office of people in that administration who are complicit in skewing COVID numbers, right? Look at Texas.
They're essentially willing to lie for their boss.
With Ron DeSantis, right, and how they went after that journalist for just reporting on COVID numbers, right? And the reaction people had to that response. And then you look at what Cuomo's done, it's the exact same scenario where they're fudging numbers to try and make it look better than it actually is. And it's deliberately killed people. And that is what's happened.
Yeah, I mean, really, we're talking about an issue where legal charges should be filed. Robin, you had your hand raised there for a second. Did you want to jump in again?
Yeah, I
Okay.
just wanted to say with all the meat, like I feel like Democrats are like toting like, we support the Me Too women. We believe all women. They wear the slogans, they tweet about it during this month, Women's History Month. But when it comes to real accountability, it's, oh no, we're not gonna do that. Let's just sweep it under the rug. We need Cuomo to run for like another political seat. He's so charming, blah, 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 blah. Or like, we believe Tara Reid, but we're still gonna put Biden as the front runner. It's just appalling. Like, I have issues with the Democratic Party, and I'm saying that as a delegate. I'm saying that, like, it's not just electeds, it's the party itself. Like, our leaders will sign a pledge saying that they're not going to take this money, or they're going to look into sexual harassment scandals, and then they never do, or they take that money. It's just filled with hypocrisy. So
it's a monstrous level of hypocrisy.
Right? It's just, if the Democrats and the Republicans switched colors, we're the same person, the same party. It's truly appalling. And I agree with everything Thomas said. Like, he said it so well. It's accountability, man.
I just want to add to this that there are a lot of Democrats that said that Cynthia Nixon wasn't a serious candidate, right? When she put up a fight against Cuomo, right, and said that she should just drop out. She's got no experience, and I just want to say that didn't age well at all. For all the people that said that she's a non-starter. I'm sorry, but Cuomo has a history here. In fact, he tried to cut Medicaid in a pandemic. I know people forget this, but he tried to cut Medicaid in a pandemic. Like, this is your governor. This is who's representing you in the Democratic Party. Above all the allegations, above all that's happened, he should not be governor. If he's willing to do things like that in a pandemic, I'm sorry, but
hopefully this is the end of his political career. I mean, really, honestly, I find it interesting that also his accuser, the first person who bravely stepped up, Lindsey Boylan, and wrote that Medium article about her experiences. She ran for Congress in New York's 10th last cycle against Gerald Nadler, and Gerald Nadler, I seem to remember, is reading just a few hours ago that he is calling for Cuomo's impeachment also. The thing I wanted to really say about this is just about the culture of sexual harassment from people like Andrew Cuomo, who have a lot of institutional power, who have this kind of macho kind of bravado, like, I'm better than other people. We have seen this over and over and over again with men like Cuomo, who believe that they can treat, I think they probably have a lot of disregard for people in general, but women in particular, they treat as if they are personal property in many cases. The things that Lindsay was saying about comments about her looks, when we look at Joe Biden, and I'm going to catch heat for saying this, but when we look at Joe Biden, it's the same kind of thing about objectifying women. Oh, aren't you cute? Aren't you pretty? The other thing is, I was a teacher for 20 years. We get trained to recognize grooming behaviors. And what Cuomo does, the way he talks to his underlings, to his staff, those are grooming behaviors, just little subtle hints here and there that, hey, if we can get behind closed doors, things would be groovy. Those are the kind of things that women like Lindsay and the other women who have come forward have had to put up with in their careers for decades. Honestly, for eternity. We are getting to hopefully a turning point where we are going to recognize this kind of interaction. We're going to put a stop to it, and we're going to hold people like Andrew Cuomo accountable, because I guarantee you 6 people coming forward right now, Cuomo over his career there are dozens, if not 100 women who have something to say about the way he has approached them inappropriately for, sexual purposes, being, in this sort of power imbalance situation that he's got going on. So there is no doubt to me, in my mind, that Cuomo has been behaving like this literally his entire career. He comes from a political family. His father was the governor of New York. He has had access to that kind of power and influence his entire life. And if we're only just catching up to it now, it is a decades-long thing. And I bet that at least a dozen more women will come forward and say, I had that same experience. Because that's the way this goes. I've seen it happen before. Hopefully an ignominious end to Andrew Cuomo's career will be coming very shortly. And you know what? Maybe if they get him out of office, we will actually get Cynthia Nixon in a special election. That would be fantastic. Yeah. So something a little bit more positive, and I'm so excited to talk about this story. In Nevada this last week, the state party elections ended up electing a clean sweep, to my understanding, of all of the executive positions in the Nevada Party. Now, the Nevada Democratic Party is historically extremely what do I want to say, insular. It's been Harry Reid's creation for the last couple of decades, and he has been very, obviously he was the Senate Majority Leader for a long time, and so for the progressives, and I'm talking about people in DSA, people who identify as socialists, people who have said, I think a lot of this, I don't want to ramble too much, but a lot of this impetus came out of the shenanigans that happened in Clark County in 2016 with the presidential primary. And so the people who were essentially abused, if you remember Barbara Boxer in there flipping people off in 2016, and the line of police protecting her, and she was so disrespectful to the Bernie supporters at the Clark County convention back then. But what we have now is these activists figured out how to take control of the party. They brought people into the party in grassroots positions, and then were able to elect their people upwards. And here we go. We've got a clean sweep of the Nevada Democrats, and the Nevada Democratic Party is now a fully progressive party. But here's the kicker. The outgoing state party chair and staff paid themselves severance out of the Nevada State Democratic Party's coffers, and then paid a bunch of their consultants. They essentially robbed the party of $500,000, walked off with it, paid their own people. And here we are talking about democratic unity. Well, why does unity always mean we got to go their way and they can't come our way? Thomas, what do you got to say about this?
Even though they just robbed the entire fund, the fact that it's legal, it must be. It's obviously legal, but
it is legal,
fact that,
of course,
the fact that this is legal is incredible. But I will say this, for listeners who aren't aware, I remember in my home country in the UK during when Jeremy Corbyn was still Prime Minister. And it came out eventually through a leak. It was called the Labour Leaks report. That basically people within his own party basically tanked his campaign purposely against Boris Johnson. And I think we should look at this as a good thing that's happening in Nevada, because I'd rather all these people quit and get out and not interfere. Because unfortunately, when we talk about unity, what usually happens is they will say the right things on television, but behind closed doors, they will interfere in a progressive socialist policies, because that's not what they actually agree with. And that's what happened with Jeremy Corbyn's campaign, that Labour MPs within his own party basically purposely tanked his campaign, basically in order for the Conservatives to get ahead. And so this is where I say a lot of the corporatist Democrats, they would rather burn the party to the ground than allow socialists and progressives to actually gain any form of power. And that's what you see. That's what you saw in Nevada. They would rather rob the entire fund from their supposed party than actually actually help them do anything. Because what it really comes down to is that, unfortunately, we have a corporate wing of this party that puts big business first ahead of people.
Unfortunately, that's most of the party.
That's pretty much all the party, because unfortunately, people like to think Democrats are the left, but they are a corporate party at the end of the day.
Absolutely.
And I think I personally think this is a good thing, because they can't they're not gonna. I truly believe that people like to think that we can have unity with these people. I don't think that's not true. I don't think you can. It's just not possible. These people would, like I said, they will burn this thing to the ground before they ever allow you to flourish. Anyway, that's my view on this.
Elizabeth?
Yeah, so I heard the news and I was really excited just because we have recently gone through this democratic process here in California. And I'm so bummed that Robin left us, because she has won an elected position as a California state Democratic delegate, and so have I. So we both have a little insight on how this structure works. So it's really awesome to see other states organizing to change and hold the Democratic state party accountable to us, the people that it represents. So I want to say thank you to DSA, because DSA also here in Los Angeles helped me and my slates win delegate seats in the same kind of structure. And I believe in a month, we will also be electing our Democratic chair and our vice chairs and our secretaries. And we will also see where, the head for us in California looks like in the Democratic Party. But that is so shady that they took the money. Well, they put it, I believe they put it in a,
They transferred a bunch of it to the Democratic Senate campaign committee, right?
Yeah.
So that essentially moving off to the Senate campaign, so that Senate campaign could do whatever they want, And what this is it shows you that the Democratic Party, and I don't even care if I get in trouble for saying this, because I've said it a dozen times. The Democratic Party operates as a soft money laundering operation for corporate money. I mean, it really does. So that money, what I really like about where I can say I don't care that they took the money, it was legal. I imagine that the DNC even advised them to get that money out of there.
Yeah, probably.
But what that means is, and I've put the call on this on Twitter, that we need to help our allies in the Nevada Democratic Party rebuild their funds, and then they're gonna do it with all individual donations. They're not going to do it with corporate money. That's what I love about this, because even if I, as a candidate, right, locally here, if I was a progressive candidate and I said I took no corporate money, but I took state party money, that money would be corporate money, because money shuffles between campaigns. Corporations will donate directly to the state party. So I can't legitimately say I take no corporate money if I take state party money. But now progressives in Nevada, if we help them fund small donations, they will actually be able to say that and mean that and still take state party money, because the state party will be a non-corporate party.
I want to add to that, Jason, just because in the organizing we do within the Democratic Party, a lot of the big obstacle we face is how are we going to fundraise? Yeah. And a lot of people within the party make the excuse or kind of just look the other way of this corporate money is because, well, how can we fundraise if we don't have this money coming in?
We have to be competitive.
And I think what's great about Nevada is that we are going to see for the first time how progressives fundraise in a state. And like you mentioned, we need to help them out and show the rest of the nation that we can raise money by not taking fossil fuel money, special interest money. So we really need to, help them out. And another thing that I want to add, sometimes I'm conflicted when I have, invested so much time within the Democratic Party. But at the end of the day, it's local politics. It's a little different because you make real connections with real people. You're not making connections with establishment types. So we have a way to create a relationship that's understanding of our progressive values. And those are the grassroots people within the party are the people that we can affect to, make change and to change that culture of accepting the dirty money.
Absolutely. So just as a follow-up to this, and what another thing that I'm so excited about with the Nevada phenomenon, I call it phenomenon at this point, and following on the heels of what just happened in California, and I'm so excited for your elections upcoming and to see what's going to happen there, and to get, hopefully you guys have a progressive chair and an executive board and all of that thing, fingers crossed. But the Nevada and California have shown that if progressives, socialists, leftists can understand what the party structure is, can come in organized numbers. I mean, the organizing behind what happened in California was stupendous. Just the use of technology to make sure everybody knew these are the people we're voting for, and you guys won 87% of those seats. It was just absolutely phenomenal. But to show that if we can do this in an organized fashion, we can do this here in Washington, because we're going to try. And I have been talking to people in Colorado, in Wisconsin, in North Carolina. People are looking and saying, ooh, I want to do, because, I am supportive of third-party movements. I really am. But our political system is not set up to support third parties right now, not effectively. But if we can get people to filter into the Democratic Party the way they did in Nevada and start taking control of the Democratic Party, then we can make some real change. And then maybe we can start changing the system so that we can have a real multi-party system in this, But if we're going to rely, we're never going to have the Democratic Party as it is right now make room for third parties. They're simply not going to do it. So we have to commandeer that party, and we have to make those rules to get that further diversity of representation, because we're stuck in that corporate duopoly right now. It's never going to happen through the Republican Party. But I do believe that there's a window of hope that we can get it to happen through the Democratic Party. So I'm going to be behind that effort all the way. Thomas?
Yeah. No, I was just going to say that I'm for an in and out strategy. Like if you if you look at I don't know if you've seen, but in Seattle, you've got Councilwoman Sewant, who's a socialist. But socialist alternative. And she's an example of doing it outside the two-party system and doing it successfully. It's so much so that she's now actually got a recall campaign backed by Amazon and big business.
Yep, they're trying to get her out of office
because of what she's been able to do. And I think you take that idea and you go, right, if I can do it independently in this state or this city, or then do it. And then if I can do it for a Democratic Party, then do it. We need to try. At this point, we don't have time. We have to try anything to try and shift the curve of where we're going. And I think if we can get as many wins as we possibly can, then great. And And I do emphasize the fact that you're right, we do need I do believe we need multiple parties, because we need to be able to hold Democrats accountable also.
Yeah, we can't hold the Democratic Party accountable from the outside without a strong left party, and we can't create a strong left party under the current political conditions. So, you know, it's a catch-22 there. So, but I fully understand people who cannot stomach the Democratic Party and can't be involved. And to all those people, I say more power to you. Build that third, stay unified, stay in solidarity, and do what you can outside the party for sure. So we've almost come to the end of the show here, I think, but Greg wanted us to talk a little bit as we wrap up here. We have been under COVID pandemic conditions for a year now. I remember, I believe it was March 15th, I think, that my state of Washington went into lockdown. I remember how it impacted the presidential primary. And I remember Wisconsin and Bernie telling voters in Wisconsin, please stay home, and Biden telling voters in Wisconsin, get out there and vote. How has, Elizabeth, let me start with you. How has your year been with the pandemic? Where do you feel, how do you feel like your life has changed? Tell us about it.
Yeah, so when we were hit with the stay-at-home order, what began to happen is a lot of people within my circle began to realize that we live in like different, we move differently within the world. So a lot of the people that I know were kind of still forced to go to work. So a lot of us, we were kind of like, nothing's changed. We still have to go to work. We still have to go out there and expose ourselves to this virus. So I guess I just feel like within this last year, a lot of people that didn't have that class consciousness within them were kind of forced to reckon with what our social position is in our society. So that's kind of like something that I saw a lot of people kind of come to a realization with. Also, I saw a lot of people within my circle willing to say, you know what I've been given is not enough. And I did see a lot of friends and families go back to school, because we saw that we were exposing ourselves to COVID-19 and we were still working these minimum wage jobs. You know, our employers weren't working with us with, calling off work or, days where we couldn't make it until maybe I want to say like April, the end of April, then, our companies began to be like, oh, we need to accommodate the workers. But at the beginning, it was kind of like, you still have to come to work and all that stuff. So I just feel like finally we see the light at the end of the tunnel, right? Because I did see that vaccines are going to be available for all adults starting May 1st. So we're seeing that we're going to come out of this. Now, the new problem that we face is whether people are going to want to take the vaccine or not, right? So I guess just the highlight of the whole experience is just kind of like seeing how our society treats us because of the class position we find ourselves in, and kind of like, like a little disregard for the working class, because even a few weeks ago, those 8 senators refused to give workers that living wage, which is 15 minimum wage. So it's just kind of like a harsh reality of how the working class is treated here in this country. That would be my thought, my overall thought.
That's great. And I just on that last little piece that, I bring up something that Sean King says frequently, and that is the only justice we ever get is that which we fight for ourselves. And, you know, I think that's really what people in the working class have found, is that they are somewhat abandoned in this crisis, and that in order to get what our due is as workers, and just as people living, you know, just as humans who deserve dignity and safety and protection, we have to fight for it constantly. Nobody in the ruling classes is giving us a damn thing. We have to go out there and demand it. Thomas.
I think, just to add to what Elizabeth has said, I think what it's really done is it's opened the eyes to what is an essential worker, or what is the value that we put on people that we describe as essential workers. And I think it's also really opened the eyes of how bad the social safety net system is in this country, like to a point where even just a mild pressure on things that are slightly different from the norm is utterly devastating. And I think what COVID has done, and this is a prime example, right? I have friends who work, including myself, we work in an essential workers position. And when COVID hit, we were told, you know, we will cover, and my friends were told, you know, we'll cover 2 weeks of paid leave for COVID. And that was predominantly because of the COVID relief package that put in place that that employers would have to give you at least 2 weeks of pay to stay at home if you get exposed or you get COVID, right? And the problem with that is that if it happens once, okay, you're covered. If it happens twice, you're not covered, right? And the amount of people that I know who either get exposed indirectly or directly, and they're told that they can't come into work and they don't have any pay and they have to stay at home. And I think what this has shown is that we can't have a system where, you know, a system that shows that you rely on a page in order to survive, you're living paycheck to paycheck, and a system that is so can be affected so heavily by just a slight imbalance of things going the way that it should be going, proves that this is a failed system. It's not, I'm not surprised that people like the World Economic Forum are trying to rehabilitate the system right now. They're trying to say that we can change things or tweak things slightly in order to try and sell this as like, hey, we can come out of this better with the current system. I don't think that's possible. The pandemic has shown that healthcare should be a human right. The pandemic has shown that housing should be a human right. The pandemic has shown that all these things that people, you know, sort of took for granted before, actually has caused, you know, the idea that I'm okay, as long as I'm okay, that's all right, is completely flawed. Because if your neighbor's not okay, then you could also not be okay now, because the pandemic has shown that if your neighbor is sick, then potentially I will get sick. And so it's not this singular sort of viewpoint or this perspective that if I'm okay, then everything else is fine. It's just gone. We live in a society. We need to be organizing in a way that helps everyone, not just looking out for yourself. And I think America has to come to terms with the idea that actually we need to have a collective mindset rather than a singular sort of independent mindset that we've had for so long. And so I know I'm going on a little bit here, but
no, it's great.
Just to highlight, this isn't just a US issue, right? My home country is feeling this also. Even though we have the bare minimum of healthcare in my home country, housing is very much a huge problem. People rent arrears are just through the roof. People are gonna have to pay out at some point, and it's gonna and even after even when we get everyone vaccinated, we're gonna have to deal with the after effects of what this has caused. Rent is going to come due at some point, and we have to have a serious conversation about what is the floor. Is the floor you live on the street, or is the floor you live in a one-bed sit apartment, right? And the floor should be you have a home regardless. That should be the floor, and we need to seriously have that conversation, not just in this country but in the world, because right now what we're seeing is that if you can have a moratorium on evictions, right? We need to have a serious discussion on, okay, if you're saying that housing is a human right and that you can't afford people to be evicted in a time of a pandemic, then really we should be saying, okay, people just shouldn't be homeless. Like that is as simple as that. And I think we need to have that discussion. That needs to be a broader level than what we've done and what we had before.
I mean, imagine how quickly we could have come through a pandemic if we had housing for everybody, if we had healthcare for everybody, right. And if, as you said, we had this collective mindset that my neighbor's health is as important as my health. So yeah, I mean, we got a lot of things to reckon with moving forward. And, you know, we also want to think to ourselves if something like that, because they are talking about, well, if it's happened once, it could happen again. That this is not the first time in our lifetimes that we're going to
right.
experience something like this. And that you know, the conditions with even with the climate crisis, the conditions may be brewing something like this even more rapidly. So, you know, yeah, we have a lot of things to think about for the future, and you know, the fact that our government didn't immediately in March or April of last year say, look, everybody just stay the fuck home. Let us pay you to stay home. You know, this is the best way to get this virus controlled, is that everybody who can stay home stays home. We'll pay you to do it. If we have essential workers who have to be out there, we're going to make sure that you are 100% protected, and we will subsidize your employers to do that. I mean, this is the job of the federal government, you know, and of course that wasn't going to happen under the Trump administration. But I think to myself, would it have happened under the Biden administration? You know, like Elizabeth said, you've got 8 senators who took a shit on the minimum wage. And why? You don't want workers to live in dignity? What is that mindset about? So I'm not even convinced that the Democratic Party would have handled this appropriately. You know, so we've got to think about, you know, what pandemic preparedness means in the future. And if we hit something like this again, what is our immediate response going to be? You know, how are we really going to serve, you know, the safety of our society? It's, you know, I'm not confident that we're there. You know, even through everything we've been through for the last year.
Yeah.
So
yeah,
we've taken up an hour here. That's it's been fantastic talking to you, Thomas and Elizabeth. I really enjoy our talks every week. We missed Greg on this one, and I hope Greg had a great workshop. But unless there are any final thoughts, on behalf of OK Now What and our host Greg Arias, Thomas, Elizabeth, and Robin, I wish everybody a good week, and we'll catch up with you next Friday.
Nice.
Goodbye, everybody.
Yeah. Goodbye, mate.